Hi, welcome to the Light Point. My name is CG, author of the Light Point book, and today we're going to get into more lessons from the Light Point, and we're looking at chapter 3, right? And so, chapter 3 is called The Prodigal Daughter. I wrote this chapter after reading a book called The Prodigal God by Tim Keller, one of my favorite preachers. You should check him out. Okay, so let me explain the story of the prodigal son so we can really understand what is going on here. So there's a father, he has two sons. One of his sons, the younger one, comes to him. He's like, hey, dad, I want my inheritance, my 1/3 of what you're going to leave when you die. I want to go. I want to be out of the house and go do what I want with it. So even though you're not dead yet, give it to me now. Which is super problematic because it was like he was basically wishing death upon his father. But the father was just like, okay, if that's what you want. All right. And so he gives the son his 1/3 of the family inheritance, and the son runs off to a different land and he is living it up, really wilding out in that different land, in that foreign land, with girls and friends and being reckless. He was being reckless. And eventually he goes through his money. He's prodigal with it. He just wastes it and he's lavish with it, and he finishes his money. He ends up destitute because there's a famine in the land, and he can't even get as much to eat as the pigs that he's taking care of. So he comes to his senses. He said, all right, this ain't it. Let me go home, really, because I made a mistake, right? And so he comes home. He goes back to just even beg the father to see, okay, maybe I can be a servant. Maybe, the father will just allow me to do something small since I really, really messed up. But as he comes home, the father sees him from a distance away, and the father actually runs to the son and embraces him and welcomes him back home. And the son is trying to, apologize, ask for forgiveness, but the father just shows him so much grace and so much mercy. He brings him home and he says, no, my son was lost. He's now found. Let us celebrate. Let us rejoice. Puts a coat on him, welcomes him back, throws a party, kills a fat cow. We're about to turn up because my son is found. Now, the older son that was there at the beginning and didn't do anything wrong, he sees his dad throwing a party for his wayward little brother, and he's like, what is really going on? Nah. This ain't it, right? And so older son is super upset, and doesn't even go into the party that the father is having for the younger son. So the father comes out to the older son to see what's wrong. He's like, hey, the party, we're celebrating your little brother. And he's like, no, dad, because I've been serving you all this time. I never messed up. I never went to a foreign land and went to go engage in shenanigans. I was here, dedicated, devoted, and you didn't even kill a goat for me and my friends. So what's good? Like, what's really good, dad? Like, why would you celebrate him when I've been doing everything I'm supposed to do this whole time? Right? And the father explains that all of his inheritance already belongs to the older son, right? Everything that the father owns belongs to the older son. But it's important because the younger son was once lost and now he is found, to welcome him into the presence of God. And that's the story of the prodigal son. So it's important to understand that the story of the prodigal son is a metaphor or a model of God and his children, us, right? And so the father is obviously God, who lavishes us with so much grace, so much mercy. He's really reckless and prodigal in his love for us, while the wayward son is people who reject the presence of God and couldn't care less, and then they finally come to their senses and then give their life to God. However, there is something that we don't often talk about, which is the older brother, the older son, who is prodigal as well with the opportunity. He doesn't waste money necessarily, but he wastes the opportunity to really seek the face of God. Instead of doing all these things for God, he wastes the opportunity to get into relationship with God. And so the reason that chapter 3 that I write in the Light Point book is called The Prodigal Daughter is because that's what I was doing. I was wasting my opportunity to enter into a relationship with God, even though I was doing all the right things, because I didn't have a fundamental understanding of what it meant to believe, right? And so it looked like this. I, was saved. I talked about in the previous chapters that, okay, I dealt with, addiction to pornographic material. I dealt with insecurity and shame and not really knowing my identity. I dealt with all these things. But fast forwarding into life, I kind of put that behind me. There was a lot of, I really prayed and I was like, okay, God, take this away. I don't want to be, doing this anymore. But I prayed more about my action than the heart behind it, right? And so even though I stopped like reading the pornographic material, even though I stopped doing many of the actions that were problematic, I didn't actually fix my heart posture to be completely surrendered and dedicated and devoted to God, right? And so I knew that Jesus died and rose for my sins. I believed that. I agreed to that. I said, okay, bet. Now I'm a Christian and I'm going forward because I believe this thing, right? But my belief stopped at a very shallow level. It went to an intellectual understanding of what happened, and I believed it on that level, but I didn't have a deeper belief about the implications that my salvation had on the rest of my life. The power that God had to really transform me and change me from a place where I was bound still in insecurity and shame after I'd been saved to a place where I experienced the freedom that was promised through salvation in Jesus Christ, right? And so that is the situation I found myself in. And I was a good kid. I just didn't want wahala. I didn't want trouble. I did youth church president. I was good in school. I was chilling, but there was just a lot of brokenness in my life. I was really lonely. I was really, really insecure, always thinking first about how other people would look at me or how things would be perceived to other people. And so even the kind and the good things I didn't come from a pure place. It came from a place of people pleasing and attention seeking and saying, okay, if I'm nice to this person, that means they'll like me. And if I'm liked, then I'm valued, then I'm accepted, and then I don't have to feel so unworthy or so insecure, right? And so all of this positive affirmation I got from the people around me, I wasn't getting it from God. And so my identity was found in how other people perceived me and the way they looked at me and the way that, they told me I was valuable and beautiful, but I had to keep going back to seek that validation, to seek that affirmation, because I didn't have it inherently in myself. And it always faded away. Why? Because it wasn't from God. It wasn't from the unchanging, never-ending source that could really affirm me in my identity as an image bearer, as a child of the Most High King. And so all of this coalesced to a situation where I was a prodigal with my opportunity to embrace and understand the love of God. I wasted it trying to do the right thing and be the kind of person that could earn his grace and earn his love, not understanding that that was impossible. And that was on one end, but on the other end, I had divided devotions, right? Matthew 6, going down to actually verse 22, starting from verse 22, it says, your eye is like a lamp that provides light for your body. When your eye is healthy, your whole body is filled with light. But when your eye is unhealthy, your whole body is filled with darkness. And if the light you think you have is actually darkness, how deep that darkness is. No one can serve two masters, for you will hate one and love the other. You will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot love God and be enslaved to money. And I think that this verse is specifically talking about money, but for me, the master that I wanted to serve other than God was my own pleasure, my own desires, like what I wanted to do with my own life. I didn't want to have to make decisions based off of, okay, what God approved of and what God was pleased of. I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to figure out who I was and what I liked and what I enjoyed just on my own terms, right? And so I wanted to serve God, but in a sense, I had another God, and that other God was myself. at the end of the day, I elevated myself to a place where I wanted to explore and make my own decisions for myself. And I think it's really common, right, for young people to want to do that. I really told God, I was like, look, God, I'll be back, but while I'm young and fly in my prime, let me go and explore the world. Let me go and see this wicked world that they talk about. Let me go and see, like, is it really wicked? Well, I want to find out for myself, because I know that, my teachers and my parents and the Bible have told me so, but I just want to explore. I don't want to be restricted. I don't want to be forced to conform really my life to a standard before I've had an opportunity to explore what else is out there, essentially. So how Romans 12:2 talks about, do not conform to the ways of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. I was like, God, okay, can you renew my mind when I'm like 40 and I have like a husband and kids? Renew my mind. See, a very twisted mentality, as if I wouldn't have spoiled my life by that time. Renew my mind then, right? When I have had the opportunity to have fun, have a good time, like experience the things that life has to offer, and I don't have to, continually like deny myself to be in the presence of God. That was my thought process. And so I definitely served two masters. But at the end of the day, it was a very precarious place to be. The position of the older prodigal son is a very dangerous place to be, because it is a place in which you think you are in the will of God, but you're really not. Even though you might be saved, you think you are doing everything that you need to do to get closer to God. You think you deserve something from him, that he owes you something, that you've been working to earn his love. So it's about time that you should have earned it and deserved it. And that couldn't be further from the truth. It's a dangerous place to be, because at least if you know you've turned your back on God, you know that you need to turn to him. But if you've turned your back on God, if your heart is far from God, but you really think that you are God and God are cool, that y'all are homies, that you don't need to seek his face because you're already as close as you can get, then how will you understand the need to really change your heart and change your motives and come back into a relationship with God? If you don't realize that you are sick, that you have a disease, how can you go to the doctor, go to the hospital and get help? That thing is just as dangerous if you know about it or if you don't. The difference is, when you have an awareness, you can do something, you can make a change, right? And so that's why I was in such a problematic position, quite honestly, because I couldn't make that change since I didn't know just how far from God I was. I didn't understand, like the scripture talks about in Matthew 6:22, the light that I thought I was living in was really darkness. So it was even a deeper darkness that I could have known, right? And so it was a bad place to be. At the end of the day, belief is not a momentary experience. It's a lifelong journey. We go from a place where we believe intellectually, and everyone has to start from somewhere. So this is not to say that anybody is condemned. It's really actually to give us hope. We believe intellectually, and then we behave and obey what God has commanded and instructed us to do. But as we go along that process, and as we seek not just to do things for God, but to really seek his face, to be like God, to look like him, to develop a relationship with him, to understand his heart. As we do that work, we evolve from behaving to being, right? We become people that, instead of just trying really hard to be like God, are actually like God. We actually have his heart. He actually replaces our stony heart with a heart of flesh. Instead of trying to behave in order to earn his love, we know we have received his love, and so we behave from that place. We exist from that place. We do things for God and works for God and love others and love God and love ourselves from a place of responding to the love that he's already given us. not from a place of trying to earn that love. And when we do that, we can find our identity not in the things that we do or how other people affirm us or anything really other than the power and the love of Jesus Christ. And the fact that we are worthy because we are made in his image. We are made in the image of God. When I started to realize that all the shame, all the fear, all the anxiety, all the pain, all the brokenness that I was experiencing, it didn't get healed immediately. I know you were going to say it all went away, or you thought I was going to say it all went away and I was finally able to just live in the light. It was a long process. It was a long process, but at the end of the day, I want to encourage us that there's so much hope in the realization that we're not at the end of the road. Where we are right now is not where we always have to be. It was a long process, and it is a long process still currently that I'm going through to find wholeness, find healing, find deliverance. But what God really revealed to me is that process has to be done in the light. Once again, if the light that you think you see is really darkness, you're in a much deeper darkness than anybody else, right? And so what has happened and had to happen is that I am in a position of surrender. I'm taking all of these painful things, all of the brokenness and the shame and all of that, and I'm saying, here, God, you can have this. Take this, have your way. I believe, God, help my unbelief. Help me to come into the knowledge of you. Help me to grow in you. Give me the Holy Spirit so that I am not operating from a place where I think I have to do certain things in a certain religious way in order for you to accept me, in order to prove that I'm a Christian. I am a follower of Christ. That is who you have created me to be. That is what I have accepted. And now that I am your child, I'm your baby girl, I am your daughter, and I have an inheritance. God, help me to walk in that inheritance, not just like a financial inheritance, but an inheritance of peace, an inheritance of love, an inheritance of joy, an inheritance of freedom, right? Freedom to be who God has called me to be and not to conform or identify with who the world tries to tell me I am. Freedom in Christ. And that's how you go from being, a prodigal daughter, I believe, to accepting the prodigal, reckless, incomprehensible love of God. And so that's chapter 3, the prodigal daughter. Get into it. Read the book so you can find all the nitty-gritty details that I definitely still go into. And yes, be blessed. Thank you.